Hi, welcome to today's episode of The A Word, presented by me, Kentaro Oe, Director of Design at Adludio. This season, we're talking to our guests about attention, AI, and ad tech, exploring the burning questions, future trends, and challenges surrounding all things creative and advertising. I'm joined today by Will Thacker. Will is a co-founder of 20 Something, a creative agency that's focused on helping brands keep up with the constantly changing world through design, communication, and brand strategy. Will, welcome to the show.
Hey, Kentaro, it's great to be here. Looking forward to this.
Yeah. I just want to kick it off and love to hear about 20 something. I know it's a relatively new project for you. I think it got started in 2019, but can you talk to us about how it got started and maybe,
Sure.
behind the scenes of like your motivation of doing something different with an agency of your own?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things I think it's always been slightly burning in me to go out on my own, try it, build something um, that is truly yours. But I guess the opportunities never quite arose or the guts to go and do it. And I think when we sort of the few years sort of building up to 2019 when we started the company and sort of rising up through the ranks and sitting on management teams, I started to sort of get a lot closer to the finances and how they were operated. Normally, a creative person doesn't touch that sort of stuff, but as you get higher up, you get pulled into these conversations, and I think it just became sort of very focused, some of the problems that were facing agencies of all sizes, and a model that hadn't changed in a long time, and budgets going down and deliverables going up, in a highly competitive market. I think that race to the bottom really started to take hold, and sort of agencies really undercutting each other, and sort of overly inflating fees in comparison with production budgets. And from a creative point of view and my creative integrity, seeing that sort of inflated fee system essentially to continue to pay for the old models was really sort of hurt me basically, and my sort of creative output. So I think that was one of the sort of biggest motivators to go and start something new.
Interesting. Um, I think that's really cool because, you come from a very creative director background and you mentioned it yourself, kind of getting into the numbers and operational side. It's not one of those things that I guess everyone kind of thinks about first, but it's cool. And I think you mentioned things like outdated models and things like that. Um, I guess like what do you think you're doing at 20 something that is kind of breaking that mold?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easy to say now, and I think COVID has had a huge impact, obviously, on the industry. Although I think that trajectory started way before; it just got sort of expedited by COVID. But this sort of idea of a more personal offering, and
Mm.
a sort of nimbler offering, and more specialists sitting in a room, and less hierarchy and layers, I think was something that businesses and clients wanted, and they wanted to be more connected to the decision makers within those businesses. So I think our initial idea was to stare at that, to stare at the model, and stare at where we could find efficiencies within those models, um, to really affect and make sure that we were putting the most of the budget onto the work that people see, and not into the systems. So I think that sounds very familiar now, and I think going through COVID and lots of people being made redundant, and lots of small shops popping up, those sort of words of nimble and agile and personal are everywhere, and everyone says about building relationships, but that it truly is in our DNA, in both mine and my business partners as well. And I think the other way that we've sort of initially looked at this was around trying to find sort of new models of making work as well. Like there was a very sort of out of date sort of process, and I still believe, of triple bidding in production, and sort of taking a script or an idea out to market and finding three sort of partners to either write treatments and come back with a budget, and you sort of held the budget over each of them. And this felt not very inclusive, not like a partnership, and you didn't let those people speak to the client. And there was lots of conversations around the script being overwritten and stuff like that. So what we tried to do from the very off is bring those partners, whether that's a film partner or a tech partner or an illustrator or whatever it might be, right into the process right at the beginning, and find those efficiencies and have those conversations at the beginning. And those partnerships also become integral to the creative development as well. So that was sort of another big, I think, sort of slight model shift that we tried to embrace. And over the years, we've definitely found some of those partners that we really work well with, and do a lot of work with each other because of that sort of combined relationship.
Incredible. I can definitely see that in terms of, how agencies, the triple bidding process. I've seen that with production houses and vendors, and it's such a lengthy time. Um, I'm curious, in terms of kind of shaking it up in the process and bringing things to the forefront, including people earlier. Do you feel like the creative output of coming out of all these operational changes that you've made through 20 something, do you see a difference between, the stuff you produce here versus, in some of your other agency roles early on in your career?
I think they were again, it's not truly down to those just down to those sort of model changes, I guess,
Of
or
course.
processes, but also a slight vision as well. So
Mhm.
I trained as a designer, and then very quickly sort of fell into advertising. It was like I targeted it pretty hard after my second year, and sort of slightly scrapped the design and just wanted to be an art director and a creative. And I spent a long time, really focusing on that. And the concept, idea. And yes, craft was in there, but I'd sort of left the design side of it to one side. And again, as I sort of my career moved on, I felt like a lot of the work that we were seeing in the world started to really lack that design consideration. And in fact, design departments themselves was sort of sometimes treated a little bit like second class citizens within the agency model. And then
Mhm.
there was also this interesting battle between, sometimes you'd work with a client and they've just had a rebrand, and a design agency's done all this amazing work over a year, and then the creative agency gets it and it's like, oh, I'll just throw that away. Let's scrap that.
Jeez. Yeah.
And I felt like there was a sort of thing of bringing these two elements together as well. So we have a hybrid offering, and that is really sort of set down to sort of brand identity and sort of comms. But those two departments really cross over as well, a lot. And I really feel that design consideration and thought comes through in everything we do. And I hope from the work that people look at, there is this sort of design aesthetic and visual aesthetic to all the touch points of the work we have.
Right. I I'm curious, do you feel like, every brand has its own audiences and targets. So this could differ very widely, but it's interesting you bring back this idea of like the craft and design, which, it has seemingly gotten lost. And, I think there is a concentrated effort, even outside of your agency, of just kind of bringing that back, whether that manifests itself into, digital components or social components or app components. Um, I'm curious, do you feel like there's outside of the agency side, on the other side of the audience, do you feel like there's a need and want for, aesthetics and design and outputs that feel authentic? I don't know. I guess, do you feel like an audience is getting like smarter into like recognizing, oh, they put some thought into this and
Well, I think they consider good looking work and stuff that they want to look at.
yeah,
Like, we are, I can't remember the number of the amount of messages we all see every day and the amount of posts, but I mean, what percentage of that looks terrible out there in the world? And I think we all have a responsibility in this industry if we're going to plaster things across our city walls out in the world or fill our digital voids, we have a responsibility to make that look and feel as beautiful as possible, even if we're trying to sell something or push an emotion or stretch a message into a new space or whatever it might be. But we
Mm,
can we can make it look as beautiful as possible.
definitely. I feel like that's a nice segue in terms of discussing the creative output, how things look nice, and how a lot of people and and companies have started to lean on AI and tech to kind of aid in that process. Can you just give me like a brief overview of your relationship with AI and how that manifests itself into your creative output, whether it's through your own personal work or through 20 something?
Yeah, I guess I started my career in 2004, and I don't think like I guess innovation wasn't part of that day-to-day briefing, and definitely wasn't at the cutting edge of it. I did start in a company which was very through the line, really sort of focusing on experiences and in store, and I think that really held me in good stead as the sort of campaign landscape evolved and the sort of desire for 360 campaigns and people engaging more within campaigns and not just being an observer. So um, I think my sort of footsteps into sort of innovations within the space and tech within the space have been quite tentative. I did a bunch of um, microsites back in the day when that was a sort of thing, although I think they're apparently making a comeback. So, and those types of things I think were really interesting, and it was all done with tiny budgets. But this idea of, a sort of brand experience. There were some for PlayStation. We did one for Rock Band, like the first edition of Rock Band, where you could choose a character and play different instruments within your keyboard. And there was another one for Play TV, which was like a PlayStation digital TV box thing that
I
sat
do
on some
remember that. Yeah,
yeah,
the throwback.
yeah. And we shot like an interactive sort of film where you could wander through, and so they were sort of my first sort of tentative steps into, I guess, more innovative tech within the space. And then the next ones I thought were really interesting was sort of uh was out of home and digital out of home, and I did a couple of campaigns which I were really proud of. One was for Amnesty International, and this we were using mobile to talk to the billboard itself, and you could sign a petition to try to help release prisoners of consciousness. And it was in Waterloo, and basically replaced all the destinations of all the train times to the journeys of these imprisoned people. And
Wow.
at the end of it, you could text in and sign a petition to free them, essentially.
Oh, that's
Um,
wow.
yeah, it was really cool. And we did another interactive one called March for Giants, maybe a year or so. And it was sort of part of the reason, it was sort of totally sort of self-initiative pro bono one where people could text in and create a digital elephant of their own, and then those elephants marched around the world. And I guess I think these were the sort of first real tastes where I was like, okay, tech is a powerful tool within this space and really helps sort of interaction with the audience.
Mm.
And then I guess the first big sort of taster with AI for us and myself really it was at 20 something, outside of all of us engaging with the algorithms that monitor us every day, was we did a project, a self-initiated project, sort of, I guess, in lockdown, really, called Another Tea. And the idea was that you could buy a T-shirt that offset your carbon footprint for a year. So that T-shirt bought 21 mango trees, and that is enough to offset your carbon footprint. But we did a load. We had a really cool design system to it, but we did a load of imagery and film using a really early runway before they had their sort of Series A raise. So it was, I can't even remember what it looked like, the platform, but it looked pretty ropey if I remember right. And you uploaded your own database. So I guess they weren't scraping imagery or where back then, but you had loaded on a database of we loaded on a database of trees, and then this runway pumped out. Didn't really have any options or controls over it, but different like weird warping forest scenes, and it was quite, quite trippy,
Yeah.
quite abstract effect, and but it really worked with the sort of feeling that we were going with for that campaign and that sort of mini brand that we created. So that was our sort of first real taste of I guess AI within 20 something, and I guess personally and I think in all honesty it put it all down. We didn't continue to investigate that. Like, it was a cool tool, we really enjoyed using it, but not until that sort of boom of the Mid-Journeys landing and I guess Runway relaunching slightly better stuff, and ChatGPT coming out. But as soon as all of that stuff sort of was in the news, and again, I wouldn't say I was on the sharp end of these things, but I did jump on them. I signed up to an early thing on Midjourney and have been playing around with that ever since. And it's a daily tool for us.
Yeah.
We use it throughout as a tool to ideate, really. I'm not sure how I feel quite yet about especially larger brands and products using it as a source to create the final output. But pretty much every deck or presentation we're giving, or if we're doing storyboards, we're creating through Midjourney, or nowadays maybe even a little clip created in Runway. So
Crazy.
I think as a tool to help us visualize and deliver concepts to a client, it's amazing. It's like
Mhm.
incredible. Some people complain that it has a very set aesthetic, but I think I disagree with that. I think you can bend it quite a lot as well.
Definitely. I do think there is like the typical I don't know if it's almost like a meta thing where it's like we know it looks like AI, so we'll produce it so you know it's AI
Yeah.
typical, but maybe there's something there. Um, I kind of want to go back. I definitely want to dive deeper into the implementations of AI currently, but you know, would you? I'm curious what you think of like the theme of, you talked about all these different projects you worked on where, at the time it was newer tech or emerging technology that allowed you to kind of reach this new audience, but is the success coming down to the fact that it's one like a great creative idea, or are you meeting people in a place that's unique, and is there a bit of a novelty surrounding that allows for it to be powerful? Like, what in all these things can you kind of thread like a theme of like why did it work, by taking
Yeah. I think I mean, I thought the ideas were good and strong, and but they, especially those two out of, although I didn't, those two out of home ideas. I
Mhm.
think it was a combination of lots of stuff, because there were lots of, in both of them, like there were lots of firsts, like that out of home, the Amnesty one was like the largest indoor digital screen, maybe at the time. I think it might still be. It's called Motion. It's at Waterloo,
Mhm.
um, and the scale of that as a digital screen, and again, weirdly, the media site where it sits is exactly in parallel with the sort of departure boards, so you could flip up a digital version of it. So it was a sort of combination of at the time they were looking for great ideas to launch the screen, basically. And so we pitched it as an agency. I was at Leo Burnett at the time. Obviously got Amnesty on board, and slightly helped them restructure the campaigning that they were doing around these sort of prisoners of conscience. They were all sort of individual campaigns, and we sort of put it under an umbrella thing called Help Them
Mhm.
Get Home. Again, that sort of tied into the positioning and where it was at, because it was at Waterloo Station, people going home, help these people get home. And then I think I mean, definitely then that wasn't a super complex thing in terms of mobile talking to screen. But again, that level of engagement where you text and then you saw your name going up on screen, or at least your first name and a letter. and sort of that immediate interaction just has that sort of shareability and engagement that people want to talk about.
Yeah.
Everyone likes seeing their name up in lights, basically. So that was really good. And then with the other one, I think the success around that again was, I mean, a lot of peddling to begin with. We needed to get a lot of PR on the elephants thing. We needed to get the story out there, and we managed to get a couple of newspapers to sort of run consecutive sort of articles around it and what celebrity had signed up to it this month or this week. Actually, it wasn't even a month. But that was a bit of more groundbreaking tech in terms of you, once your elephant was sort of loaded onto the digital herd and it walked across these screens all around the world. There's one in London, Times Square, Vegas, Hong Kong, and Sydney, I think. You also got an image back of your individual elephant walking across the screen at that time on your phone. And again, it just made another element that people could share and put back out into the world. And I think that sort of circular motion that you create, I can't think of the word, but with a campaign, super important. You get the ball rolling and then it sort of can feed itself slightly.
Definitely. Really cool. I appreciate the insight behind that. I'm always curious about those types of things, because a lot of them are one-offs, and there's it's kind of like capturing this moment in time, both like
Yeah,
cultural and the mix with tech. A lot of it's organic, kind of getting that reach, and it's fascinating to see that kind of thing really happen and take hold of an audience. Um,
yeah. They take work basically as well. Like
yeah.
yeah, I mean, that elephant thing, without people running around doing a lot of very traditional door knocking and PR work, it just wouldn't happen. So
Mhm.
the tech would not fulfill itself without having that sort of people out sort of petitioning for it at the beginning. So
Definitely. Um, Yeah, getting back to the implementations of, generative AI in the context of what we were just talking about, as a leader in your company and as a huge creative voice within the company and within the industry, like what do you think is like a healthy mindset surrounding like the creative possibilities of AI? Like, do we do we go we should embrace it as a tool, which I think we're kind of on the same ground there, but how much do we push it? How much do we allow it to kind of mold the day to day for us?
yeah, I mean, I guess a really important thing from my side and a personal note is that I'm really dyslexic. I was diagnosed really young. I've had it sort of I've been aware of it my sort of whole life really.
Mhm.
And it does, it impacts my day to day, like the way I approach things. I find workarounds all the time, and although I write scripts and I can write headlines, it's definitely littered with spelling mistakes, and sometimes I can't even read it back to myself. So that's taken a lot of craft, and I have to say the sort of chat GPTs, that's my brand of preference, but any of these tools has like been a game changer to me personally. I mean, not just in that sort of day to day. I'm not asking it to write scripts. It's about spelling and grammar checking. But being a founder and a business owner now, the amount of emails that I have to respond to, the amount of people I want to reach out to on LinkedIn, articles that I have to write. I found it quite crippling for a long time, the amount of time that I would spend doing that and not focusing on creativity or helping someone generate ideas or giving feedback or whatever it might be. And I have found it hugely liberating.
Mhm.
I'll give you an example. Like to write just a normal response of an email to someone might take me half an hour,
Mhm.
and I'm not talking about a long response. I'm just talking a little snappy
Sure.
thing, like, and now it just takes me minutes. Whether that's like I'm writing a voice to text note on in my notes, and then I quickly copy it across to ChatGPT, a little check, and off it goes. And this technology has just sort of transformed my day to day basically hugely. So I'm a massive advocate for it. I do think there's some question marks around production and implementing this into the real world. I don't think it's a definite hard no, but where, and again, I am no expert on how these models are sort of pulling their data or information and how
Mhm.
they're creating them. Um, uh, I do question putting that out as sort of live work, and I don't think we're in a place to do that yet.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. I think we've seen examples of where it's very clear it's feeding off of, what's already currently out there on the
Yeah,
internet, which some things are kind of rooted in biases, which, it's just turning out what it only knows. So, um, yeah, I think that's a fair assumption to say. In terms of I guess I'll call it like the accessibility side of AI, you talked about how ChatGPT in this specific instance was liberating for you. Can you talk to us a bit more about like, what does that do for in terms of your mental capacity to kind of focus on, the creative ideas and the meat of your work? And, I guess like kind of changing your day of just like, here's a thing that takes care of this arduous task for you that in
yeah.
a matter of minutes, now I have all this free time, like both in the actual physical day and mentally in your space. Like how's that really shaped you?
Yeah, again, I don't, as I said, that I look at dyslexia as a hindrance, but also a benefit in many ways. I definitely think that neurodivergent people look at the world slightly differently, and I'm really appreciative of the way that I look at problem solve, and I think a lot of that's done down to dyslexia essentially. So
Mhm.
I wouldn't take it away from myself. So yeah, I mean, look, as I said, the sort of mental capacity of like, if they just take an example of you have quite a serious note to respond to a client about a process, or you're trying to argue a point, and it's that thing could take me hours, and it now doesn't. And also, there are sometimes there's time pressures on these situations, like you need to get this note out before they go into the next meeting and things like that. So I think that the weight that it's lifted from that side of things, and also probably the weight that it's lifted from my colleagues of like checking this note or rereading my emails before it goes out, is huge, and it then just frees me up to be or to do what I love doing, which is coming up with amazing, fresh, raw ideas,
Mhm.
and I know as well that I can, because it's so much better at deciphering, is probably the best way, my sort of raw text language or tech typing. Um, I can sit way quicker and just smash stuff out and just keep rolling, keep rolling, keep rolling, keep rolling, and know that I can sort of take it back and quickly translate that, and check its structure and spelling, and before slipping it into a deck that it needs to, or if it's feedback to one of the creatives or one of the designers. Again, it's just way simpler for me than it has ever been.
Yeah,
And, like I said, it really is quite liberating in that sense.
definitely. What a game changer. I kind of want to circle back to where we first started this conversation regarding, the things that you were shaking up in terms of the outdated models and all those processes that we talked about in the agency world. Um, how do you think agencies, well, I guess both agency and clients, like that relationship, how do you think they've been doing in terms of discussing AI, in terms of the use cases for it in the work or operationally? Is that something that's is that notoriously slow because of what we know about how outdated some of these models are, or do you feel like they're
Uh,
pushing it a little bit? What do you?
I think most agencies and creative people are in there using it.
Yeah.
I have been surprised to bump into a few people that haven't tried Mid Journey or things like that, and And I'm not saying it's always the best way to turn, but and then I think I've been surprised. There's a couple of agencies that have come out, or even groups that have come out and said that they're not allowing AI tools to be used within the departments. I wouldn't be able to call them out by name if I would, agree, but I think that's silly, and you're just handcuffing your creatives. And if you've got people have got to be on the forefront of the emerging tech there. Like it would be a bit like, no, you're not using Photoshop that's just landed, or don't use Illustrator. Like imagine where you'd have been as a designer if you'd put those tools down. So I think it's from an agency point of view, I think it's really clear and clean to embrace it as a tool internally. I think, yeah, you just need to, if you're going to go out to the world and put work out in the world that's commercial work using these things, I think honest and open conversations with the clients, and they need to understand what could the dangers be in the future around this in terms of copyright, as it's all a fucking unknown, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we have had a few conversations. We did a project called a branding project with a Web3 company called token.com, which is trying to simplify and bring the world of tokenization to the masses, and
Mhm.
not making it feel dark and cryptic, and really get back to people believing in the projects they're investing in, rather than just it's just an investment that I was going to shell um once it goes to the moon, basically. But like really investing in these cool Web3 projects that are transforming our planet and stuff. And we really wanted to create a visceral world, uh where not in a too distant future, but a sort of a utopian world of Web3, essentially. And we looked a lot at using AI tools to generate the imagery for it.
Mm.
And there was a funny one, like one, all the ones that we sort of really got to, it was really hard. We were referencing artists or styles or genres and things like that. And again, I think that's a no. Like that's, for me, it just feels a little bit immoral.
Sure.
And then the other one was the client control. Can I have this here? Could I do that there? Can I do this? And I guess maybe even since we did that, the models have changed, and you can do a little bit more with them, but you don't have the ultimate control over it. And in the end, and for the better, we hired a really amazing illustrator that created these incredible sort of utopian scenes
Mhm.
of a not too far distant future. And it looks fantastic for that, and way more human. And
Yeah.
in some ways, it is really considered every little bit of those illustrations, which again, you don't have that control. So that sort of overall aesthetic you might get from an AI image, and that sort of immediacy, I don't know if you get that real detail that you can keep looking into and finding those human moments.
Right.
um, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, the work definitely speaks for itself. It's definitely something I caught when I was doing a little bit of research, but it is interesting because you explored AI first and then you landed on a human designer, right? So I
Yeah.
think there's something to be said about, yeah, at least we explored it, and it led you to this point because you explored it in a way, and because of the pushback from the client for control, those things kind of led to the work that you see right now. So it's interesting because I feel like in a way, in that specific example, it kind of reverted back to like what we ultimately knew, or what we were
Yeah.
used to, which is contracting with talented artists. So um yeah.
I think we went to it first, not just because a financial thing, but also the brand it's meant to be on the cutting edge of tech. And
Mhm.
so AI, wouldn't it be cool to use AI and at that point? But yeah,
Yeah.
it actually it didn't align particularly well with the strategic position of the brands, which was about humanizing these stories and bringing the real people back to them, and that they aren't just a number going up and down. Crypto isn't just about the investment; it can be about the project that you love. So, and the people
Definitely,
behind it. Yeah.
definitely. I am a couple final questions. I guess I'm really curious now because we talk about like the control side of clients, and it's their work, right? It's their media and production knowledge going into it that they allowed to make it happen. So I think it's understandable. But then, it's kind of a double-edged sword where you want to control, but you also want to embrace this new tech. Like how what kind of like how can we ease the client's mind, I guess, as people on the agency side? Like what responsibility do we have to kind of, I guess, educate and give a little guidance in terms of the tools and what it can do, but what it also might not be able to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is definitely a conversation that comes up more and more now
Mm.
with clients all the time. How it, or even them being curious around how we're using it, not necessarily that it would be right for the campaign. And I guess it would be it's. I think we just need to be, if you're going to be putting it forward, we need to be as well read and on the pulse on where legally everything is before anyone enters into this. But I think it's a case by case scenario as well. I definitely think there are smaller brands where it can be relevant. I definitely think that there are charitable or social good campaigns where these things can be super powerful and really democratize the work, getting work out for these sort of missions or statements or social good things.
Mm.
We've been looking at using it for we did some work for a festival, a rebrand for a festival, a small festival. Just like we really like the guys, and they had like a really nice idea about adding more narrative to their festival. So we
Okay.
created for them, but they didn't. It had to close the doors this year, along with I think there's like 84 UK festivals have closed the doors this year, just of the cost of living crisis, energy bills. It's hit that sector really badly, and although the Glastonburys and the big festivals all still happen,
Mm.
the UK was famous for thousands of these small festivals and being sort of a summer of joy and
Yeah.
it's over the last 2 years been really hit by that. And we are looking at doing there's an organization called 5%, and we're looking at using AI to create them a sort of short message. I haven't actually approached them about that, but I would like to do something for them.
Amazing.
And we've got an idea about using those tools. So, I would be open with them, and I'd hope that no one would come after you because of what we were trying to do, and that we weren't flogging anything, that we were just trying to make try and make something better
Yeah.
for the world.
I think that's a nice thought to kind of end with here, Will. Uh,
Great.
yeah. Well, Will, thank you so much for joining and for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you very much. It's been great.
All right. And for our listeners, please tune in to the next episode of the A Word brought to you by App Studio.